like that.
Well, I mean, I've got a new article. It's here in the stack. Being reported that they're going to do home inspections now in England to make sure you've got the new light bulbs. But then there's a big report out that the light bulbs have to be left on, and that the light bulbs are much more toxic.
I mean, it is ridiculous. It's getting absolutely ridiculous and slightly frightening. I mean, you know, the amount of legislation they're prepared to put in now, and the restrictions of ordinary freedoms. But the thing is, there's no rational basis for it. Even recycling has been criticized as being just a kind of a fantasy thing which makes people feel good.
But see, it's ritualized. They train you to do it over and over again, and then it habitualizes it. Everything social engineers do is to habitualize, and then that way you're trained into the values of it.
And the difficulty is, as well, a lot of politicians, think this is just rubbish, but no one dares speak out or step out of line. I mean, even George Bush now has felt the need to capitulate. Obviously, George Bush doesn't believe in this sort of thing, but he just feels the need. It's political suicide now, because the difficulty is a lot of the people behind this are very influential in the media. I mean, they're more or less the people who run the BBC.
But it's not just the useful idiot liberals who want this. There's a lot of big institutions that want this tax to be served up to the IMF, the World Bank, the World Trade Organization, the United Nations. Look, here's two articles today about, I want to get your take on these. London Telegraph. British government makes climate change laws that can never be changed or rescinded. Environmental groups will be able to take future governments to court if they fail to live up to one promise to cut Britain's carbon emissions under a climate bill published today. Here's another one, the one I mentioned. This is UK Daily Mail. Government eco-snoopers to inspect homes. Homeowners who refuse to make their properties energy efficient will face financial penalties under drastic government plans to transform Britain the world's first green economy. It's just neo-feudalism. Of course, Prince Philip's for it. Can you comment on what they're pushing here and on Prince Philip?
Well, I mean, it's kind of bordering on fascism, all of this, I think it's no accident that the Nazis actually too happen to be terribly into kind of environmental stuff, because there's a sort of romantic anti-industrialism that has a long history. It goes to the Nazis, it goes beyond the Nazis, over to Rousseau and things. There's a rich kind of intellectual history in all this, and people like Prince Charles fits in, very nicely into that whole world view. I mean, one chum of his is a guy called Lawrence van der Post, who, was very keen on preserving what they describe as, a traditional tribal life in Africa. One big thing is that we're imposing industry and change on Africa. I mean, if you go to Africa, they're desperate to modernize. The idea that they just love living in the dirt or something is an awful idea, but that's part of this kind of philosophy that somehow tribal life is more glorious and noble than modern industrial life. And that view is usually expressed, that kind of, backward-looking view is usually expressed by people who have Apple Macs on their desk. It's not that they like groveling around in the dirt and surviving without electricity. They're happy to wax lyrical about non-industrial society, but they don't go for it themselves. Well,
this is really about neo-feudalism. Of course you're going to have royalty having an instinct for feudalism. Everyone else must live in the dirt.
For them, isn't it?
I'm sorry, go ahead.
It's the good old days for them.
So you agree this is a neo-feudalism?
Oh, completely. I mean, Prince Charles has created a little old-fashioned village out in the countryside in England, saying this is a model village, this is how it should be. I mean, you can see why he pines for a world gone by, because in the olden days, kings had genuine power here, and so no wonder he looks at the past with rose-coloured spectacles. But personally speaking, my ancestors were, boggy peasants in Ireland. I have a different view of the past.
Absolutely. It's a control freak's dream, isn't it?
I honestly think it's frightening. And when the articles that you mentioned, trying to even transcend democratic powers to overturn laws, they would have it beyond our powers to change.
This allows a select few to set all the governing principles of society and have it unchallenged, where they are the grand arbiters of the entire environment. It is feudalism.
I mean, even if the whole stuff were true, even if man-made global warming by CO2 were true, and I can I can recommend you look at the, well, you suspect the theory anyway, but, I mean, the thing is tosh. But even if it weren't, that is not the way to go about running a society.
Well, I agree, but I mean, even the UN's own report, like I said, that came out a few weeks ago, says humans are 6% of it. I mean, even their real documents admit we're not doing it. They just take data that shows it isn't true and just say, look, it shows it, knowing the public's not going to go read scientific papers.
I mean, a lot of the sort of IPCC stuff is just, you know, extraordinarily dodgy. And as we point out in the program, actually, there was an excellent letter to the Wall Street Journal by a former head of the American Association of Sciences, I think Professor Frederick Seitz, noting that in their summary, in their big summary, the IPCC, which they reveal to the press and the politicians, they delete lots of awkward comments that they don't really like too much from their reports. You know, it's not just what the scientists say, and they always claim that their reports are what all these scientists think. The scientists are not asked to agree at all. There's no vote taken. So they kind of claim a consensus which doesn't exist. That's
right. Listen, you're the director. You made the film. Martin Durkin, The Great Global Warming Swindle, and hopefully it'll be available soon on DVD in the U.S., and when it is available, I want to have you back on. Thanks for spending time with us.
Thank you, Alex.
God bless and take care. All right, I'm going to come back, tell you some of the news that's coming up, then we'll take your calls, then we'll get into the news.